Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
Hi, this is Brenda J. Since we have listeners from all over the world, we'd like to provide information on how to access domestic violence resources in other countries. Sarah McDougall has a free app that is safer than going to a website because it does not leave a browser trail. It includes verified resources in over 200 global regions. The Trauma Mamas app, it's called Trauma Mamas. This app is available on Google Play and the App Store. And that is traumamamas.app/links. And I will include the link to the app in the show notes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Amy and Emily on the podcast. Amy is an advocate for the city of Mesa and Emily for the town of Gilbert. They both help with Winged Hope Advocacy Center as well as Karen and I. And hey, I'd just like to welcome you both to the show, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us. We're happy to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. This is such important information. So this is Karen. Today we'll be talking to the family members, friends, and advocates that want to help the domestic violence victim. Remember, every situation is different, so apply what is helpful to you. Even if you currently do not know anyone, it's good to educate yourself just in case. It's just good information to have. It's so very, very common, unfortunately. Maybe you have a friend that mentioned something to you, but you did not know how to respond. You can share this episode with them. This is just important information. And a safety plan for staying, how can a friend, family member, or advocate help?
I think the most important thing that we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what types of threats that someone has made against this person. And so really trusting that, empowering the friend or family member that we're working with that, like, hey, we trust you and we believe you. And we know that you certainly know what's best for you. We just want to make sure that you know that we care about you and we're here for you if you need someone to help. But do not do anything without that person's consent, because you could be putting them at more risk. For example, I worked with somebody who really, really wanted to call law enforcement on a coworker's ex. And we really had to take a deep dive into the conversation of, hey, that threshold of probable cause that Emily was talking about earlier, if law enforcement can't find that probable cause, then calling law enforcement on that person could put the victim at more risk, because now she has to share her home with that person tonight, and he could act out in retribution against her. And so if that person is not ready to leave, if right now is not the time for them to leave, please trust them, trust that they know what is best and safest for them. But by all means, let them know that you're here when and if they are ready to leave.
That's great advice.
Yeah, that's very, very important. So,
Now, in a safety plan, reaching out to law enforcement, how can the friend, family member, or advocate help, Emily?
Yeah, there's a lot of great ways. Everything that Amy just shared it will definitely apply to this as well. But some additional things that might be helpful is having a code word that someone could call or text over to you, asking you to call law enforcement on their behalf. Or you could, volunteer to hold on to evidence for them. They could email you pictures. They could email you audio clip. And those are things that you could maintain for them until they're ready, or if they're ready to report to law enforcement.
And a safety plan for stalking, how can friend, family member, or advocate help for that in a stalking situation?
Maybe offering to walk with someone who doesn't feel comfortable walking by themselves at night, taking different routes if they think that somebody is tracking their locations. We talked about technology safety planning. If that would be cost prohibitive for the friend or family member that you're helping, maybe offering, if that's something that you can afford to do, to contribute to them financially, to say, this is something that I can't afford to do and I want to help to link you to some resources to get new devices. And if it's not something that you have the financial means to help support them in, maybe aiding them to connect with organizations that could help them with that, to get a safe device, to help plan out new routes home, and just reminding them of the importance that the digital safety as well.
That's good. And a safety plan for harassment. How can a friend or family member advocate help on that one?
Yeah, again, it can be helpful to assist with collecting evidence. So it could be that the victim shares with you the dates and times of harassing messages or how often it's happening. Written logs are evidence that can be used in an investigation or given as evidence for prosecution. The case moves forward. And the emotional support is critical in harassment cases. That can make people feel very out of control and that they're dealing with some very devastating behaviors. And so being emotionally supportive is critical for that as well.
Yeah, definitely offering that validation. So in a safety plan for relocation, how can a friend, family member, or advocate help in that situation?
If someone has decided that relocation is the best and safest thing for them, sometimes things that can be challenging is, what am I going to do with all my stuff while I'm packing up and leaving? Maybe offering to help store some things. You could help to link them to organizations that can pay for relocation, reminding them that organizations exist to help keep their future addresses safe from being discovered by the defendant. For example, Arizona has the address confidentiality program. Most states across the nation have an address confidentiality program. So just making sure that they know that you're there to help them. Again, one of the things that we talked about earlier is one of the number one reasons why people don't leave an abusive relationship, not number one, but it's up there, is their pets. So if you have the ability to help foster their pet while they're relocating, that can be really helpful. Or just reminding them that there are shelters, both domestic violence shelters and animal shelters, that will foster their pet if they need to leave quickly or go across the state lines.
In a safety plan for family court, how can a friend, family member, or advocate help? Emily?
Yeah, they can assist with finding legal resources, assisting with finding financial resources to pay for any sort of legal resources, really practical things, giving rides to the courthouse, printing off documentation so that people can start filling stuff out and filing it. Watching children while they have to attend court hearings can be very helpful. And sometimes in family court, there's an opportunity to have character witnesses or people come speak on your behalf. And so being able to share any abuse information that the victim is comfortable with, if there's anything that you've seen firsthand, or share your concerns for that person's safety, as well as, the great parenting that they're doing, the positives and negatives that you've seen over the time that you've been friends with them or known them, can be very helpful as well.
Yeah. And I know when I talked to you guys earlier, you said that you get a lot of questions from friends and family members on how they can help. So I really do hope these are just things that great. I'll watch your kids today. I love that. I love that, but we don't think about it. We're all overwhelmed in this type of situation.
Even offering to give them a ride to court, because a lot of times in family court, we're subpoenaed to be there. So we have to be there. And when it comes to stalking and harassment, I don't want the defendant to know what my car looks like, or I don't want the defendant to have access to my car, place a tracking device on it, this, that, or the other thing. So even offering to give them a ride to court can be such a caring and helpful thing to do.
Plus, it's just so overwhelming to walk into a courthouse.
Yeah.
And it's just overwhelming walking into a courthouse anyway, because you don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. And just having somebody there with you for emotional support is
having somebody on your side, right? That for that emotional support, having somebody to sit with you, to hold your hand, to remind you to take deep breaths can go a long way.
Yeah. I think in the entire thing, just going through domestic violence, harassment, so any of that is so overwhelming and emotionally overwhelming that any support from friends and family member is so important.
Yeah.
So important. And I don't know if I had a lot of that. I didn't even tell my friends and family till after I filed the order of protection and divorce papers and everything. So I wish I would have known that these advocacy centers and groups were out there to help me, because I was all alone. But it was amazing to know that these resources are here now and that I've actually been able to help other people through the things that I went through all alone. The safety plan during an explosive incident. What are some of the things that family members, friends, or advocates can do to help? Amy?
Encourage your friend to develop a plan to protect herself or himself and their children. And they can do that with an advocate, or they can do that by reaching out to some of the organizations that we've mentioned already. Help your friend think through the steps to take if your friend's abuser becomes violent again. Make a list of people that your friend can call in an emergency. Let them know that you're always there for them and that they can call you if that's something that you have the ability to offer for them. Suggest that your friend put together and hide a suitcase of clothing and personal items, money, social security cards, bank books, children's birth certificates, school records, and other important documents in case they need to leave quickly, having all of that accessible. And offer to keep this suitcase in your home if that's something that you're able to do.
Okay. Safety when preparing to leave. What are some things that a family member, friends, or advocates can do to help? As safety is the number one priority.
Yeah, make sure they have a safe place to stay that protects the victim and their children if they have children. Help them call a domestic violence victim service program if they need help finding a shelter. Allow them to leave things like money, extra keys, copies of important documents, clothing, sentimental items with you in advance so that they can leave quickly if necessary. Go with them to open things like a savings account, PO box, and just supporting them through that process if they're interested in doing so. Help gather ahead of time and hold for them other important documents like identification cards, children's immunization records, marriage license, divorce decree, birth certificates, school records, and medical records. And help them review a safety plan if they would like to do so with you. And having a safe cell phone they can collect from you if they need one is a great safety planning tool as well.
Yeah. And this is so great because this is a lot of things that when we help someone, we've got to help them protect their phone or whatever. But if the family members in that can do this and have their phone protected ahead of time, that's just one less step that they have to do when it actually comes down to it.
Absolutely. And places like Walmart will have their flip phones or their very basic phones, and you can buy them for $20 or $25 and have a minutes card. You could just store that and not have it activated or used unless somebody ends up needing it. So it's a great resource to have.
Yeah, I had a burner phone and then I did that. I had one at Walmart and then till I got a new phone number. And then just with some people that I've worked with, we've had to get them burner phones and try to figure out the phone situation. So definitely important. And if any family or friends can help with those things, that's great. So safety at home, what are some of the things family members, friends, or advocates can do or should do to help for safety at home to keep their home safe once, say, the abuser's out?
Yeah, for sure. Anything that a friend or family member can do to help fortify the physical security of your home. So helping to change the locks and doors and windows, or making sure that the windows do latch and lock. If the abuser has access to keys, making sure that those locks get changed before they come back. Replacing wooden doors with steel security doors, installing security cameras, additional locks, wedges against the doors, wedges that you can put on the inside of the door so that somebody tries to push it open, it would prohibit the door from opening. Smoke detectors, fire extinguishers for each floor of the home, install outside motion detectors and lighting systems that light up when someone approaches any part of the home. To help teach children how to use the phone to make calls to friends and family members, or teach them how to call 911 if they don't know how to do that already. So, friends and family members could certainly help to support victims in teaching their own children, or if they feel comfortable letting you help to safety plan with those children, that would be great. Remember to remind them to tell people who care for their children the names of people who do not have permission to pick them up from daycare, making sure that they know my children should not be picked up by my partner and my partner is not allowed to have access to them, making sure that they have copies of important documents like orders of protection, giving a copy of that to schools, daycares, babysitters, Sunday school teachers. Help victims tell the following people that my partner no longer lives with me and they should call the police if they ever see them near my residence. You can tell that to neighbors, church leaders, friends. You can remind them to inform their property manager, give the property manager a copy of your friend's order of protection with a picture of the person who should not be there anymore, and ask them to notify police if they ever see them return to the home. You can help them change their telephone number to screen calls and help them to block numbers.
Okay, so in the case of order protection or restraining order, what are some of the things that family members, friends, or advocates can or should do to help in that situation?
They can assist them with making copies of it and keeping it in a safe location for them. keeping the original with the victim and giving copies of a protection order to the police department in the areas where they visit friends, family, where they live and work can be helpful. In the state of Arizona, we have a system called AZ Point that tracks all of the protective orders. And once the court system sends that into AZ Point within 24 hours, that will be something that law enforcement across the entire state can see. So you could also ask your court or law enforcement in your area if that's something that they'll be able to automatically see, or if it'd be helpful for you to submit those in hard copy form. Helping them or reminding them to tell employers, church leaders, family, friends, and others about the protection order. Reminding them that if the protection order gets destroyed or lost, they could go to the courthouse or law enforcement and request another copy. You could be there and help if the abuser violates the protection order, to assist in calling police and doing a report, and assist with things like calling their lawyer, advocate, counselor, and or courts to assist with reporting about the violation. You can also remind them that if they need any assistance with clarification on why arrests might not be made, they can address concerns through the chain of command with police. So if the officer doesn't make the arrest, they can ask questions about why that didn't happen, if it didn't meet the parameters or have probable cause. They can ask to speak to that person, sergeant or lieutenant, and they can definitely talk with people like victim advocates, attorneys, and counselors to seek some clarification and assistance on those situations as well. You can remind and assist them on filing any complaints they might have across any area of the criminal justice system. And you can let them know that they are able to call 911 and ask for a police escort to go back to the home and get some of their belongings, typically called a civil standby. If their abuser was granted use of the home, or it's not a place that they're on the lease or on the mortgage, they can request to go get those belongings. On the opposite side of that, if they receive a protective order and they were granted exclusive use of the home, the abuser may have an opportunity to request a civil standby to come for a brief window of time with supervision from law enforcement to gather some of their belongings. So as a friend or family member, it might be really helpful to be supportive for them during that time. If it's safe for you, you could be there to support them. You could be away from the property. You could be on the phone with them or be texting back and forth with them. So there's a lot of ways that you could support them through that time period.
Yeah, that's a really scary time. I remember that when they could come back into the house. I had my son do that. I wasn't even there for that. So in safety in public and place of employment, what are some of the things that family members, friends, and advocates can or should do to help? Amy?
Yeah, you can certainly let your friend know that it's really important if they feel comfortable disclosing what they're going through, just reminding them to tell somebody and really deciding who to disclose that information to. Sometimes the more people who know what you're going through, especially if it's a dangerous or unsafe situation, the safer you might be, because if you don't show up for work that day, or if it's been a while since somebody's heard from you, they'll know what you're going through, and they can maybe reach out to check on you. So also, if it feels safe, reminding your friend to disclose with their employer what's going on, maybe letting them know to keep a picture of the abuser up at the security office if available, providing a picture to your leasing office if he's not supposed to be on the premises, making sure the management company knows to keep an eye out for him and to call law enforcement if he shows up. So just reminding them to share if they feel comfortable with some people who can help to keep them safe. You could also remind them to screen their calls, arrange to have someone screen and log the telephone calls if it's something that's really having an effect on your mental health, to say, hey, I just can't. Or if your friend is having a hard time doing that themselves, maybe offer to do that for them, or remind them to maybe have a point person that can check in on them and go through their call log and help to capture that physical evidence if it's something that they feel like reporting. And also to help them make a safety plan. Create a safety plan for when you enter and leave the workplace, maybe having somebody walk with you, maybe having security escort you to your car. Again, reminding your friend that these are important things to keep in mind. Parking near a well-lit area, maybe parking near an area that has video surveillance. And if you work at the same place with the person, or if your friend works at the same place as their abuser, discuss with your supervisor options regarding scheduling, safety precautions, employee family benefits. Places of employment may seek to obtain injunctions against workplace harassment against the abuser to assist in your safety, as well as the safety of other employees. Remind them that if they have an order of protection or restraining order, to keep it with them at all times. Inform building security and coworkers you trust in your situation. Help them to vary routes to and from their job, school, or treatment facility, and to arrange for someone to escort them to their car, bus, or van. Help them to plan what to do in various situations if the abuser confronts them.
Yeah, this is hard because you're scared. The person's scared. So it's almost like just helping to remind them they may not know all these steps.
Mhm.
But if you listen to this and you're helping them, it may be a little easier for you to say, did you do this at work yet?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And so when it comes to alcohol and drugs, what are some of the things family members, friends, or advocates can do to in that situation?
They could check and see if the victim is going to use alcohol or drugs to encourage them to do it in a safe place with people who understand the risk of violence and who are committed to their safety. I also think it's wonderful to connect with people and see if they need new resources for alcohol and drugs. So would they like any assistance? Do they need support? Practical things like car rides. Do they need a designated driver? Is it important for their safety in ways like that? Or childcare. Can I watch your kids for the night if that's a decision that you're going to make and you're spending time with people in a safe way? There are lots of different levels of support there.
Yeah. And what are some steps that they can take to help protect their children? What are some of the things that family members, friends, or advocates can do to help protect their children? Amy?
Yeah. So helping to teach developmentally appropriate safety strategies to the children. There's a really awesome book list on the website for Winged Hope Family Advocacy Foundation that if you need some resources in teaching some developmentally appropriate safety planning measures to children, then books can really help. So maybe offering that book list to your friend, or maybe offering to purchase some of those books and give them to your friend. Also, just recommending that they teach their children how to use a telephone, especially to use 911 or to contact the police or fire departments, and how to contact a safe neighbor for help. Make sure that those kiddos know the address if they do need to call for help, that they know the address to give law enforcement to respond. So just helping them to memorize the address. I know for my own daughter, we wrote it down on an index card and just memorized it until she knew exactly what our address was. She was only 7 at the time. So give people who take care of the kiddos copies of custody papers and orders of protection, as well as emergency numbers, especially if you're going to call those numbers on behalf of the victim, if that's something that they've asked you to do for them. And then establishing a safe word between you and your friend so that if they text you this word, or if they say this word to you over the phone or in person, that you know what to do. Help watch their children if they need childcare. That can be really helpful and empowering. And help to find a safe place that their children could go if they're in danger. Be there for them and support them in court through legal issues, custody issues. Just being present can be really helpful.
Yeah.
And what are some steps for friends and family members to help for technology safety? Emily?
Helping them or asking someone familiar with technology or domestic violence about ways that the abuser may monitor them on cell phones, laptops. There's a lot of different ways, and that things can be embedded in phones and can't be seen. So having that checked. Help them to use a computer that the abuser doesn't have access to. This can be really helpful for research or printing out forms, documents, safety plans. That can be really useful. Let them know how to be careful about who they give their email address to, and use the blind copy feature when copying the support network in an email. So giving them an opportunity to email their attorney and being the secondary person on that email if they'd like to, or an advocate and being the backup person can be really beneficial to help them keep track. And helping them get a new cell phone or a new computer. Amy's brought up previously, it's a great suggestion. You can factory reset devices sometimes to wipe out some of that spyware and things like that. But it's often ideal to get a completely new device. And so either assisting them with finding resources or having that be something that you directly assist with can be really beneficial for that survivor. The National Network to End Domestic Violence has some really helpful tips.
They have a whole list of things to keep an eye out for and recommendations for what to do.
Yeah. So, and Amy, is there any other ways that we forgot to talk about they can assist, like a friend or family member, in helping in the technology area?
Maybe even just offering to let them use your devices. So if you know that your devices haven't been compromised by their abuser, maybe letting them know that they have access to your phone when they need to call their attorney, or that they have access to your computer when they need to research domestic violence support organizations.
Okay. That's good. I think you get a lot of technology.
Yeah, like technology-based stalking and harassment. And yeah, I think that in and of itself could be another whole podcast.
Yeah. So if anybody that's a friend or family member, or you know anyone that can help in that area, that is really much, much needed, because they have to be safe in that area. That's huge, because even if they leave or they relocate, and their technology's not safe, they could be found way too easily. So
Right.
you really, really got to protect the technology first, I think, and make sure you're safe.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So regarding emotional health, what are some of the things family members, friends, or advocates can do to help? Amy, do you want to start with that?
For sure. Yeah, I think offering to support them so that they can share with you if and when they want to share, if they feel depressed and ready to return to a potentially violent situation or a partner. So maybe making a point to check in with your friend and say, hey, I'm going to talk to you on Friday, and then I'm also going to follow up with you on Sunday morning just to check in and see how you're doing, and kind of making an appointment to follow up and check in just to let them know that you care about how they're doing. And if they need that emotional support, that they can find that in you if that's something that you provide to them. Support them when they must talk about the abuser in person or on the phone. Help them use I can statements and to be assertive with other people that it's okay to set a healthy boundary. That's actually a super empowering thing to do, and let them know that they can call you for support. Things I can do to make them feel stronger would be reminding them that they can create a written record of all incidents of abuse, violent dates, description of incidents, photos, voicemail threats, medical records, that they can keep this in a safe place or give copies to the police. Or if you can keep those for them, that would be really helpful too, so that they know that it's in a safe location that can't be discovered by their abuser. Let them know that even if their abuser goes to a batters program, that this doesn't necessarily make them a safer person or a changed person. Remind them to base all of their decisions about their future and their children's future on this one thing alone: our safety. Remind them to ask themselves before they do anything, will this action promote their long-term happiness and be in their best long-term interests? Remind them that they do not make any decisions based on what others think or on guilt that they may feel. Remind them that the abuse that they have experienced is not their fault and that they did not deserve it. They will remind themselves that they have the right to be happy and safe, and that their children deserve to be happy and safe too. Do some activities with them that they enjoy doing. Maybe journaling, maybe going for a walk. Help them if they have not worked outside of the home, and worry about your ability to support themselves by encouraging them to get job skills and taking classes at a community college or vocational school. Helping to connect them to resources, financial resources, job skills that might empower them to navigate that independency if they are leaving an abuser that has financially controlled them in the past. Encouraging them to get job skills and taking classes at a community college or a vocational school if they can. Maybe helping to drive them to those programs if that's something that would be helpful. Assist them with their driver's license, a car, a ride, anything that can help to empower their independence.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, just validate them. I think validate them that they're not crazy. I think that's a very important thing to remind.
Yeah, and this is listed in 65 countries. So I know Sarah McDougall has lists for domestic violence resources and those type of resources for, I forget how many countries, but all over the world. So if anybody else is listening from one of these other countries, I think the resources are different wherever you go. So yeah.
Yeah, every state is different. Sometimes every county is different. Sometimes every court is different.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So anything else that we might have forgot?
I mean, I'm sure there's so much. I think if there's one takeaway from this podcast, I would just say try to get connected to a local agency in your community, because there is a lot of support. There is a lot of resources. You are not alone. There is someone that can help. And they may be thinking about things that you're not even considering. So just, if you can, connect with a local domestic violence support agency. They can really help to take some of the burden off of all of this stuff, because it's super overwhelming.
Yeah.
But they specialize in this. They do it day in, day out. So just reach out to your community if you can.
And any last thoughts, Emily?
I completely agree with Amy. I think that'd be a great ending point. That's perfectly put. So
Okay.
No. Yeah. And I think the other exciting thing about this is going to be, if I have somebody that's interested in doing a safety plan and I talk to them about it and it's a really traumatic week, that information may or may not stick. And I'm happy to have that conversation as many times as they'd like to, but sometimes they might have availability at 8:00 at night. And now if I can send them a link to this podcast and be like, hey, if you end up thinking of any other questions, or if you want to listen through this and then we can reconnect, this is going to be really a good, helpful baseline for people to have. This is going to be great.
I can't agree more. I thought the same thing. And I think Brenda and I actually talked about that. I was like, I cannot wait to be able to incorporate this into my outreach to victims. And I'm sending them emails all the time that say, hey, here's a couple of resources that we talked about. And, I gave you a lot of information and it's overwhelming. So when you have the time to digest this information, you'll have it in your back pocket or whatever. To be able to equip them with something like this, where, they can take a deep dive if they want, or they can just list the quick, most important, essential things, is going to be really helpful, really empowering. So that's why I cannot thank you enough. This is going to help us in our safety planning discussions with the people that we work with. So thank you.
I'm hoping everyone all over the world will use it as a resource, and all over the country. I mean, that to make it easier. I mean, when you think about creating a safety plan, even advocates that are just starting out or trying to help, it's overwhelming. They can use it as a resource too. So
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's when we went through that. When I met Amy, it was like, okay, this needs to be done. Like, we knew immediately.
We were doing it in real time, right? We were like, oh, we're safety planning right now. Right? I think Emily said it takes a village, right? Yeah. And even that victim that we helped eventually did get into a shelter. And even with the shelter, even with all of the on-site support of an organization like that, it still takes a village.
Yeah.
And I think people who've been dealing with isolation, like knowing that there's multiples of us is amazing. Like, I was in Texas for 4 days doing site visits for the FAC that we're going to build. And so I was useless. I'm in other people's secure facilities. I can't step out and take phone calls. And so Joyce stepped in and talked to some of the victims. I know Amy helped a couple of them that week, and I so appreciate it. But the fact that, like, we could be our own village and like staff ideas with each other, or be like, all right, I thought of these 8 things, but this is the situation. Can you help me think of anything else that would maybe be beneficial? Or do you know a resource that I don't know? Like, we just help each other shine and help more people, but we also can have each other's backs. And I think that's probably the best piece of advice for like new advocates. Like, lean on your resources. Don't feel dumb asking questions. Always ask for help, because until I sent out a bunch of emails saying like, who's bilingual in my community? Can someone help me? And Amy's like, oh yeah, I can help you with that. Like,
that me.
That's me. Like, it's amazing that advocates are a very cool community of people who will help each other with anything. And I love that about
definitely.
us.
Oh yeah.
Definitely noticed that.
We got you.
Yeah.
Nice to be just you get someone that you're talking about safety planning and you know how much it is. Just go, I'm going to send you this podcast, and then how about tomorrow you listen to it, and then tomorrow let's talk about what you came up with. That's going to save you guys so much time if you think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and just like, we can't be available 24 hours a day. We'd love to. I mean, I'd love to have 12 Amy's, but I can't clone her yet. So until then, being able to send somebody this at the end of the day and be like, yeah, listen to this tonight, digest it. Let's reconnect at 9 a.m. if you're free. Like, that'll be huge.
No worries.
Yeah, I think one thing that you just mentioned is, it really reminded me of something, is being clear and transparent about your role, like as an advocate or as a friend or support person, that you are not an emergency responder, because you never want to give someone the impression that like, oh, hey, I'm here, I'm part of your safety net, I'm part of your support group. I am not an emergency responder. So if your life or your limb or your children or your family, your house are in any immediate danger, you got to call 911.
Yeah, and that comes up a ton for me, because people hear Gilbert Police Department and they're like, oh, okay, cool, I'm sending you evidence. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not me. So I have conversations on the front end about confidentiality, privileged communication, and the fact that I am not sworn. And so we talk about like, you can send me anything you want and loop me in on what's going on in your life, and I'm happy to go over things with you, but like, we have to send evidence to sworn officers. So our limitations and our expectations with our own functionality. Amy, that's an excellent point. I talk about like, these are my business hours. Sometimes I'm available outside of them, but it's based on my schedule. So here's the emergency line, here's the non-emergency line, and here's my capabilities. That's super important. I agree with you on that 100%.
Yeah. Even in my work with Winged Hope, where, they're like, we work on weekends, we're volunteers, we never stop working. Right. But establishing that healthy boundary for your own mental and emotional health too, to be like, hey, I'm not a 24/7 emergency responder. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can, but I am not available 24/7, because if I was, I would burn out, and then I would be here to help others in my community who are going through what you're going through.
So is there any other important information that you wanted to add to that?
Abuse is never your fault. The person who's causing the harm is responsible for their own choices, behaviors, and consequences. And I am always here to support you and care about you and how you move forward. And so.
Yes, absolutely. It's very important for them, because usually they're made to feel like it's their fault or something. So that's very important to stress. Yeah.
Right. Love should never hurt, and everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you both so much for coming on to the podcast. Where can someone find you if they wanted to reach out, or who can they contact to get started on their safety plan?
I think if you live locally, the best thing to do is to just Google domestic violence support organizations in your area. I'm personally located at the Mesa Municipal Court with Victim Services, and a Google search of City of Mesa Victim Services would lead you to myself or one of my colleagues, all who are very capable of starting a safety plan with you.
Great.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. Lots of community-based organizations are great, and if it's safe for you to Google them, that's a good place to start. Amy's department is incredible. We collaborate quite often, and I appreciate them. Most court systems and police departments have advocates embedded that are able to assist. And if someone wanted to reach me personally, I am with the Gilbert Police Department. You could call our non-emergency line. Also, something you can Google, but it's 480-503-6500, and request a referral to Victim Services, and they'd be able to get you over to us as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you so much for the work and the commitment that you have to the community. I think that this is such a wonderful thing that you guys are doing and will be really helpful to get that information out. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're
amazing.
welcome. Thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.